Ladies and gentlemen, foes and fans, friends and fudders, I'd like to thank you for being here on Shy Speaks Chib, episode number 6. Today I'm very excited. I have Shant with me from Ethermail, and we're going to really get deep into. So we're going to talk a little bit about business, the future of business, what we all can expect, and get some tips on what it takes to be a CEO. So for all of you out there who are building on Shibarium, and who are interested in starting your own business in this new world of AI and Web3, we like to call Web4, this is the podcast for you. We're going to get some great tips. We're going to hear about an incredibly interesting product, and we're going to talk about what business really is. Now let's talk about business first. If you've heard the other podcasts, I've spoken a lot about culture. We've spoken about nation states and what it takes to make a state. And now we're going to drill down and go a little more in depth on what it takes to really start an interesting business. And I'll be speaking from my own experience as an entrepreneur, and also giving feedback on my experience in SHIB as a decentralized entrepreneur, which is much harder than working in the regular Web 2 world. And why is that? In my opinion, my humble opinion, Web 2 has been designed with certain, I guess you'd call them rails. It's very simple and easy to do things. In some jurisdictions, some things are more complicated than others. But now with the use of AI and things like Mass, which one of our partners, you have the ability to create your own business with just a click and instantly have not only your own EIN, but also your own bank account and all the other things that you would need that usually would take a long time. So the challenge of creating the business has been in many ways reduced to zero. The other challenge seems to be getting the right idea. What exactly should I do? And my advice always is to do what you're passionate about. If you don't do what you're passionate about, the chances of you burning out faster increases dramatically. That's because, as any entrepreneur will tell you, and I'm sure Shant will agree with me, it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of hard hours in the office, outside of the office, meetings. I mean, it becomes rather difficult if it isn't something that you really love to do. But sometimes that's just not how it works. I know I've met people say, I don't know what I want to do. So what do you suggest? And in that case, I suggest using the best tool available right now, which is AI. And to talk to AI and try to figure out what fits your current situation, and also what fits the current trend. Trends are going to be very important in the future because as it becomes easier not only to create a business, and I mean technically with all the different paperwork and everything, but I mean to create a business exactly, meaning the ability to run a business with one person instead of a staff of 10 or 20 or 50. A lot of businesses now, especially most of them with AI like Midjourney, are making millions of dollars in actual recurring revenue with just a handful of employees. And they do this because they supplement or complement their employees with AI. And so now it's much easier for you to create a viable business than it was, let's say, 5 years ago or even 3 years ago. We've seen a variety of business ideas pop up in Web3, and we've seen a variety of business opportunities just come out of nowhere because of AI. And I believe that this will continue. Another interesting question that I've been faced with, and actually this one was brought to me in a different podcast that I was on with Bill from Cypher Capital, was about AI and if I believe that AI could replace jobs. Now, this is an interesting question. Will AI replace more jobs than it will create? And I believe that it will. It's simple because At the end of the day, if it's easier to create a business and run your business with less people, that just simply means there's less jobs. Now, new jobs will be created, and a lot of new opportunities will create themselves. But I think that we're going to have some sort of AI burnout. And what will really happen is that the creator economy and those who create things will have a boost as more people have more time to do what they love. We're already starting to see this. I don't know how many of you enjoy YouTube like I do and listening to the variety of news and content that's there, but some of the best channels aren't the ones that are quote unquote faceless channels created by AI. And I love it. Don't get me twisted. I think it's great to have faceless YouTube channels and the ability to create that easily. It's one of the products that we've been working on very quietly for a long time and use internally for our newsletter to help or bad idea AI. However, at the end of the day, as the market becomes flooded with AI content and eventually some of it to be malicious, in my humble opinion, the opportunity to be a creative and be paid what your art or your creativity is worth will be powerful. Now, smart creators will of course use AI and they'll use some of the best tools at their disposal to be more efficient and effective. And that's where you're going to see an interesting marriage of man and machine and the nexus of AI, business, and really humanity. And right at that nexus, of course, stands the core elements of any business that won't change anytime soon. One of them being email, of course. As we all know, having a good email address and being able to speak to people via email and through other messaging is extremely important. However, what happens when you begin to consider the idea of having email in Web3? And that's what we're going to talk about today with Shant and hear a little bit about his experience as a CEO and building a product that includes Web3 with a Web2 feel. Shant, thanks for being here on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Totally my pleasure. Completely my pleasure. So tell us a little bit about Ethermail.
Yeah, so Ethermail is a platform that we built several years ago now, about 3 years ago. And basically what we're doing is facilitating anonymous communication between communities and their end users, and also offering a very familiar experience to onboarding the Web3 ecosystem. So bridging the gap between Web2 and Web3 so that people can use Web3 as if it was the things they're accustomed to. So via email, they can basically use a sign-in with Ethermail, which is an equivalent of a sign-in with Google. You can get your content directly from your communities, and you can write to other people, receive invoices, payments, everything the same way you would in Web2. So we're just mirroring and facilitating the experience so that the next billion users can come over into the Web3 space.
Very interesting. And I spoke a little bit about the moment of knowing I want to do this. I want to create this business. What was that defining moment for you that led you to create Ethermail?
So the idea had come up maybe if the project started about 3 years ago, the idea came up, let's say 2 years before that. So a total of 5 years ago. And when I had the idea, I actually was commenting it with my brother, and we both said, oh, wow, that's a cool idea. Just putting on your wallet address at ethermail.io. Someone will probably do it. Time went on, then the NFT boom happened. There was a big community sentiment where people were participating in NFT communities and everything like that. At that moment, I was advising another project that was doing NFTs, and we saw the problem of, people are joining our Telegram groups, they're muting it, now they're switching hands the NFTs. How do we get in touch with them again? Discord, etc. And we said, well, is someone doing that idea that I had mentioned about 2 years ago? And we saw that there was really no main player. And so I thought, well, if the idea is still with me, I still have the need. I still think that the space can use it to grow and evolve, and there is no dominant player, then it's pretty much still a flaming yes for me. And so I started getting my hands dirty, because if the idea hadn't disappeared within 2 years and I still felt something about it, then it meant I had passion for it.
And there's that word, right? Passion. Would you agree with me that like you have to do what you're passionate about if you're going to be a CEO or an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. Because if you don't, then there's nothing that's going to motivate you to keep going through the rough times. And I think that's what passion helps with. Imagine you're doing something you don't like, and on top of it, it's not rewarding. And on top of it, it's not your passion. Like what motivation do you then continue to have to sort of push through and trudge through? There's so many other options that would just be so tempting to just go and do. You could argue that if you're not passionate about it, you're not gonna, commit 120% to it and keep going. And even through the bad times and the good times, to see it through to wherever you need to take it.
What's the toughest decision you've had to make as a CEO? Because you talked about, there's obviously when you're leading a project like this, there's good times and then there's bad times. What's the toughest decision you've had to make?
So I think Google at one point had many discussions about this, even on their own platform for their, let's say, homepage. And, it really resonated with me through my entrepreneurship, journey. Because until you live it, you can't really appreciate it, I think. And it's really the hardest part is really saying no to things. It's, a lot of people have a lot of good ideas. A lot of team members, a lot of people in the industry, community members, advisors, whatever it might be, right? And everyone has good ideas, everyone has their variables, and everyone wants to contribute. And they have things that are properly thought out, but it might not be our focus. It might not be my intention, my vision. And so saying no is the hardest thing, because it's what actually permits you to stay focused. If you say yes, even though it seems nicer, what you're actually doing is when you say a yes, you're saying no to an infinite number of other things, because you're going to prioritize this thing you said yes to. And so saying no for me, I think, is always the hardest thing. I've gotten pretty good at it. Don't get me wrong, but I still find it being the hardest thing, honestly. It's about focus and maintaining focus. It doesn't mean it's the right decision. It doesn't mean, anyone's got a crystal ball. It doesn't mean any of it. But it means that by saying no, it allows me to focus on what the vision I have is, for the present and future of the company.
Excellent answer. And, really a great piece of advice for any entrepreneurs that are listening. The ability to turn down an opportunity so that you can stay focused is vital. And really having a vision is just as important, right? If there's no vision, then you don't know what to say no to. So, I think that's a very important thing. And I'd like to talk a little bit about your vision of, where you want to take, Ethermail, and also what are some misconceptions that people have about Web3 email, and how do we change that?
Yeah. So great questions. Basically, I think one of the big misconceptions is that email in Web3 is not needed. For example, people think that maybe communication is solved with Telegram, or it's solved with Discord or something or Twitter. But the reality is very far from that. Think about how many websites you sign up to on Web3, and then they ask you for an email address. So then you've got two options, or three. One is you give them your personal one. The second, and then you're giving up your personal identity, even though you used an anonymous wallet, which is kind of strange. The second one is you create a fake Google account, and then you're using a centralized platform with big tech, and an anonymous wallet. Or the third one is, you can use Ethermail, which protects you anonymously. It's encrypted. And so, you're always signing up to these platforms where they're always asking you for these types of this email address, and they're forcing you to sort of, use it. And the reason is really that email is actually the biggest, communication mechanism that retains communities. Additionally, with, let's say, return on investment as a business to, generate value for your consumers, where they see the value, you're reaching them, and therefore they are buying your service or product. And this is fact for Web 2 as it is for Web 3. And so, where Telegram, you Discord, you mute the channels because it's two-way communication. It's, FOMO. The people are just, posting FOMO, FUD, all sorts of things. With email, it's much more personalized. There's less noise. You're getting the important bits in a rich format, which Telegram and Discord don't necessarily offer you. On top of it, with, Web3 email, you can use it for, sending NFTs securely via email. You can send your tokens and do payments via email because it mixes wallet and email technologies. And it also supports things like smart contracts. But overall, it just supports so many things that these traditional Web 2 solutions don't. And that's where the misconception is, right? Believing that Web3 email is not needed. Because it offers so much more. And I think people unknowingly are sacrificing either their security, their anonymity, or other things by ignoring the fact that the email is needed.
Excellent answer. And also very insightful, for me. It's something you don't consider how much we rely on Google or Hotmail or Yahoo. If anybody still out there has AOL, you should probably stop that. But this is really, a future, proof way of communication. And I love it. But one thing we haven't spoken about yet, and we definitely should, because the SHIB community loves and is born from decentralization. I know decentralization is a part of this, and I think we should talk about that. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the decentralization and Ethermail?
Yeah, of course. So because we use blockchain technologies, a lot of things come through the decentralized nature of it. You get all of the wallet resistance, encryption. You get the ability to monitor smart contracts, to do the payments, to do all sorts of things. And, you can even use aliases like ENS, unstoppable domains, and all of that to make sure that, it's easy to spin up, it's anonymous, it's secure, it's, if you transfer an NFT, that the decentralized aspect of this allows you to get communication with the right people. But additionally, at one point, there are going to be some plugins and things that you can actually use to enable your IPFS storage, if that's something that you're interested in. Again, everything is encrypted, so it's sort of a trade-off between censorship resistance or speed, and that's a choice that the user can make. So we do offer these types of solutions to really bring home the blockchain and Web3 technologies into Web3 email.
Now, one of the things about being a CEO is it's not just vision and passion, but it's also team building. So I'd love to hear some advice you could give, or how you personally tackle team building that can thrive, especially in this agile environment.
I think especially in an agile environment, the most important thing is having, let's say, positive vibes and quick learners. I think those two things have to go hand in hand. You don't necessarily have to have all the knowledge in the world, but you do have to have quick learners. Because if you're in a fast-paced environment, it's likely that what you knew today is going to be obsolete tomorrow. And so the most important thing really is being able to learn quickly. And so that's what I would highly suggest. Let
me ask a question about AI, because AI is a big focus in the world right now. Everyone knows that it's coming. AGI is coming, and everyone's kind of, I don't know, fearful maybe is one word, or apprehensive about what happens next. I'd love to get your take on this as a CEO and as somebody who's in Web3. Where do you think AI is going? Where does this all lead?
So it is a very complex subject matter, as you can imagine, with millions of differing opinions. In my specific place or mindset, I do believe that it is going to destroy a lot of jobs. And so unless people are equipped to using AI responsibly and or learning to use it to give themselves superpowers, they will find themselves out of work relatively quickly, right? I think that's the truth. AI, at least in its current state for people, that are working, it's basically giving you an exoskeleton, a digital exoskeleton or some, steroids or something to do what you do faster and better, assuming you know how to leverage it. Of course, it can take you down some rabbit holes and it can take you completely different directions. So you do have to have some solid understanding of what it's good at, what it's bad at, and of your own knowledge instead of just assuming what it's giving you is correct, right? So you take the role of, let's call it a senior or someone that is revising the output of someone a little more junior. So it doesn't substitute your knowledge yet. It can accelerate the retrieval of the knowledge you have with some errors, and it needs some supervision as of today, right? And in terms of other things that I maybe as a technical or as an entrepreneur, my, let's say, ability to distinguish whether color palette is attractive or not, or if I'm using the right colors, or if I have zero taste, right? Like that's how I am. I'm very bad visually, in terms of, is something appealing? And so I have to always trust designers and other people with good taste. But AI now allows me to articulate what I would like, and it also creates it with good taste. So it gives me superpowers, right? And I think that's really, really cool. And so if this is its current state where it replaces many different fields or it accelerates a lot of things, I think, the sizes of companies, as we're seeing and has been mentioned, will reduce, right? You don't need as many people to do the same type of work. You can put things on autopilot. You can, it's just baffling, the possibilities. And, if this is just, let's say, an infant AI, it's scary to think what an AGI could do.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And, it's a challenge, for everyone because there's this idea of, zero or 100% unemployment, right? Where everyone loses their job. And, what happens when that happens? And, I've heard everything from money becomes useless. I've heard all types of security, concerns like, hey, what happens when AI has full control of your mobile device? That's coming probably. And these are the type of questions that we are faced with. And it's where, secure, decentralized email really could come in handy, versus using something like Google, which may not even survive the AI revolution at this point. No one knows who will survive and who will not. So it's an interesting time to be alive. It's an interesting time to be an entrepreneur. The whole idea that you could run your own business with a handful of people, which you could not 10 years ago, and the amount of savings. I actually saw a business, don't know which one it was, but they said that they had reduced they actually just stopped hiring. And because of churn of people who just, decide to leave or go somewhere different, they were losing a percentage of people every year. And what they told all of their employees was, you should use AI more because the lower our headcount, we're going to take all of those additional profits and put it and basically increase the wages for those who stay with us and use AI to get superpowers. And it worked really well for them, because now you have people who are really excited to use the AI and they lose the fear of this AI could reduce my job or reduce me to nothing. Instead, it's how do I use this AI to help me become faster at what I do best? And that's really where, right now at least, where AI is extremely helpful. But as an entrepreneur, the ability for you to run your business with a handful of people is just magnificent in many ways. And, it's also bad in many ways. But either way, it seems that email is here to stay, right? Because, we will always need a way to communicate. It will always be important. And Web3 isn't going anywhere either. Even though we're in a bear market, as many would say, Bitcoin's still, last I checked, above 90. And I remember when it was at 14. So, we're not in a bad place, although it may feel like it because of the global, situation. But overall, this is probably one of the best times to be alive ever, when you have this much power in your palm. And we can't forget that, I think. Let me see if I can just ask one, final question. If we could, I'd like to know, why does the world need Ethermail in the future as you see it? Where do you think Ethermail fits in this new world with AI and where Web3 is going? This is really a question about your vision and what you want to leave our listeners with when they are done listening to this podcast.
Sounds good. It's a great question. So why does the world need Web3 email? And I'll add on the AI at the end, I suppose. So basically, I think Web3 email is a way to, articulate the onboarding of, getting into crypto or Web3 in a much easier way to Web2 users, right? When we go and tell them, hey guys, you've got to create a wallet, or you have to go, install this extension, etc., it becomes much more fearful for Web2 users because it's just very confusing. But if you tell them, hey, just go create an email account with Ethermail, it's the way that we're articulating onboarding is, I understand what email is. That's easy. I know how to do that. I can go do that. So by making it so friendly through its user experience and its accessibility to other platforms, with sign in with Ethermail, or sending a payment as easy as an attachment, for example, with tokens and things like that, it makes the Web2 user adopt the solutions much better with open arms, right? Companies as well are much more interested and understanding in Web2 of email than they are of a Telegram, a Discord, or anything like that. So the future of Web3 and Web3 email can very well go through the email experience to Web2 companies and users to bring them in, as just a very simple onboarding mechanism, just because everybody's comfortable with it. And whether it's email or something else, I still think it's email because it's easier for people to just use something they're familiar with than to educate them on something they have no idea about. And when we talk about AI, there's two things that, at least in the Web3 space, and email, you could talk about. So on one side, with AI, they will need ways to communicate to the external world. Agents need that, right? Even if they act, let's call it as an employee, if someone sends a support ticket or they want a refund on an order or something like that, AI can do those types of tasks. However, they need an inbox or they need a chat or something to be able to receive the communication and send it. So will there be AI email inboxes in Web3? Absolutely. Even in Web2, right? And now the interesting thing about this is knowing that that's going to exist. Now it also creates a problem in the world. It's not something Ethermail is very much worried about, but it will exacerbate in Web2. In Web2, basically what will happen is with AIs, they're going to be able to create so much generative text or images or anything like that, that they'll be able, if spam was a problem before, now imagine what it's going to be like now, right? And this is going to proliferate on WhatsApps, Telegrams, LinkedIn's, it doesn't matter. Because on top of it, if in Web3, we're already familiar with Sybil attacks, Web2 sort of thinks, they're somewhat resistant against all of this. The problem is only going to get exacerbated because all the solutions that exist today, arguably, let's call them CAPTCHAs, let's call them certain firewalls and solutions, is that AI can fake being a human. So these solutions now also become much more vulnerable. And so in Ethermail, at least, we have what's called a privacy wall where you can restrict your settings and you can set all sorts of permissions. So it's not going to be a very big problem at all. But however, in other scenarios for other communications, other platforms and all of this, you don't have that type of permission-based blockchain, support, based on certain assets, all these other types of things you can look at where, and it's going to be able to falsify being a human very easily. So it's going to exacerbate and create a massive, massive problem and headache for sure.
I completely agree with you. That is so insightful. It's, one of the problems that I've been trying to solve for a company that I am a visionary for. And I call it malicious AI because at the end of the day, we haven't even begun to discuss malicious AI yet. The idea that scammers will be able to use, especially when you have AGI, just as good as they can use any other type of scammy situation, be it a scammy ad on Google. So you Google something and it's a scam website. Imagine having an ultra intelligent AGI that can create that website, create the ad, and do it all within seconds. You're right. The proliferation of malicious AI or even unintentional malicious AI for a website, because all of a sudden you're getting hit with a million hits, there's 100,000 people trying to get something all at once, it's going to be a problem. And these are different, situations that I see on the horizon that we're trying to solve. And, it's just so interesting to talk to you because you bring up so many very good points. And a lot of them, email, especially a decentralized email like Ethermail, really becomes a solution, for some of these problems. So I look forward to discussing more, with you off of the podcast about that. I also began to realize, that we have our ship name service, which I think would be compatible. We should discuss that as well. Lots to discuss. So excited, to talk to you on this podcast and to share with the community insights from a real CEO building in the Web3 space, with some really good advice, and some great insights. So Shant, thank you for being here today. I think we're out of time, but it was a pleasure. Can you tell everybody your website and, the best way to get in contact with you?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. To sort of stay in touch, stay up to date, we've got ethermail.io where you can go and create your, Ethermail email account, for Web3 email. And we can stay in touch with your, official newsletter because we can just send our unofficial newsletter into your email accounts. And so that's one of the best and most exclusive ways. Otherwise, you can always follow us on Twitter, or X as it's called now, of course, and our Telegram. Always just search for the Ethermail.io and or the verified account, and you'll definitely find us on those platforms. However, primarily encourage having a Web3 email account for sure.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Shant, for being here. And listeners, thank you for being here once again. Thank God for having us and allowing us to be here again to talk to you. I'm always grateful. And I'm really excited to see who we will have on episode number 7, which I am recording tomorrow. Very excited about that one. I believe I will be recording with the CEO of Zama. So we're going to get some insight into encryption. I hope you will join us for that podcast. And thank you for joining us today. Until next time, thank you and talk soon.